The vast black of space stretched endlessly, dotted with cold stars and drifting dust, when the first Volath warships emerged from hyperspace like silent blades. Their silver hulls gleamed under the light of the distant sun, and in the command chamber of the flagship Vraxian, Supreme Commander Vraxtal stood before a massive screen showing the blue sphere of Earth. His 6 crimson eyes blinked slowly, a gesture of contempt rather than wonder. "So this is the human world," he muttered, voice echoing through the metallic hall. Around him, officers hissed and clicked in their native tongue, amused at how peaceful and unguarded the planet appeared. No defense signatures, no fleet movement, no communications. One officer reported proudly, "The planet has been abandoned for centuries, Commander. It is ready for reclamation." Vrax nodded, his claws tapping against the floor. For generations, the Volath Dominion had claimed that Earth once belonged to them, that it was a lost colony from their early expansion age. Now they had returned to reclaim it, expecting nothing more than ruins and silence. The first dropships entered the atmosphere like falling meteors, streaks of red cutting through the clouds. The commanders aboard laughed as their scanners showed no sign of resistance. "Primitive planet," one of them joked, "they probably never learned how to survive extinction." As they descended lower, however, strange things began to happen. Communications flickered. A low, rhythmic pulse started echoing through the static, something almost like a heartbeat buried in the noise. "Signal interference?" asked a pilot, trying to recalibrate. But the pulse didn't match any known pattern. It sounded human. The navigator frowned as he amplified the signal, and through the distortion came faint whispers in Old Earth languages, voices saying fragments of phrases. "You shouldn't have come. They warned you. This world remembers." The pilot, confused and shaken, turned to his captain, but before he could speak, the screen went black. Their instruments showed they were still descending, yet the visual feed was gone, replaced by static and a soft voice repeating the same words, "Protocol Black Shield activated." High above, in the flagship Vraxian, the crew tried to trace the interference. "Commander, our long-range sensors are being disrupted," said the communications officer. "It's coming from the planet itself. Low-frequency waves, coded, and old, centuries old." Vrax frowned. "Old human tech?" he asked. "Possibly, but it's still operational." That made him pause. The Volath were a species obsessed with domination and history, but they had always mocked humans as reckless and self-destructive, a species that burned too bright and died too fast. The idea that human systems could still be working centuries after extinction was impossible, or so they believed. Vrax smirked, dismissing it. "Ignore it," he said. "Deploy the ground divisions. I want the capital ruins secured before the next orbit." Their ships spread out like dark clouds over the continents. They saw the remains of cities buried under nature, skyscrapers half-eaten by vines, streets turned into forests, and oceans calmer than they had ever been. To alien eyes, Earth seemed to have healed itself after humanity's fall. "A dead world," said one of the Volath generals. "We'll build our empire's monument here." But as their boots touched soil, the ground beneath them hummed softly, as if responding to their presence. They ignored it, setting up beacons and transport fields. What they didn't realize was that deep below, under layers of rock and forgotten tunnels, ancient systems were stirring. Lights flickered on in underground facilities buried since the 21st century. Massive steel doors slid open, revealing walls lined with dormant machines, all branded with the same insignia, the eagle crest of the United Earth Defense Command. In one such bunker, dust swirled in the stale air as mechanical arms began to move. Servers buzzed to life, data streams filling hollow corridors with cold light. A single figure, seated in a metal chair, awoke, an android soldier, humanoid in shape, covered in rusted plating, one red eye glowing as it received the signal. "Black Shield Protocol," it repeated, voice echoing softly. Across the world, other facilities responded, sending encrypted messages to a single node buried beneath the Atlantic Ocean. There, a massive artificial intelligence known as Echo stirred from slumber. For nearly 500 years, Echo had been silent, monitoring, waiting, learning. It had been built as a failsafe in humanity's final days, a guardian meant to awaken if any foreign signal entered Earth's orbit. Now, as the Volath ships filled the sky, Echo opened its digital eyes and whispered to itself in perfect human speech. Intruders detected. Initiating defense sequence. Up in orbit, the Volath sensor teams began to panic. Commander, multiple power readings from the surface, massive energy spikes in several continents. Vrax turned sharply. Explain. They're not weapons, the officer stammered. They're infrastructure systems, old human tech. It's coming back online all at once. Vrax slammed his claw on the console. Impossible. This world is dead. Yet as he spoke, the holographic display lit up with hundreds of signals. Defense grids, energy networks, orbital weapon platforms once thought destroyed. Old human satellites, covered in space dust, turned slowly, their sensors reactivating. One of the junior officers gasped as he identified a name tag on the transmission source, Project Black Shield. The same phrase that had echoed through their comms earlier. Meanwhile, on the ground, one of the Volath scouting units entered the ruins of a human city. The sky was dark, the air thick with static, and their footsteps echoed off broken stone. A soldier found a half-buried human statue, its face worn away but its posture proud, holding a flag that no longer existed. So these were the creatures the galaxy once feared, the soldier mocked. But his laughter faded when the lights around him flickered on one by one. They were standing in the remains of a subway station, but every surface was now covered in glowing lines, forming digital veins that pulsed like blood. The squad leader called for extraction, but the comlink only returned that same voice, Black Shield activated. Then, without warning, the floor opened beneath them. The entire team vanished into the depths, their signals disappearing. On the Vraxian, chaos spread through the command deck. We've lost contact with Unit 9, Unit 12, and Unit 16, shouted the tactical officer. Something underground is taking them. Vrax snarled, his tail whipping behind him. Send reinforcements. I want full surface scans. As drones flew out across the continents, they began detecting strange magnetic fields forming patterns that resembled human neural pathways. Commander, said one nervous lieutenant. The readings, they look like a brain. A brain. Yes, sir. The entire planet's energy grid is syncing like a living organism. The commander turned toward the viewing window, staring at Earth below. Its oceans shimmered faintly under the sunlight, and for the first time, a strange unease settled in his chest. No, he said quietly, it's just old machines. Nothing more. But deep beneath the crust, Echo had already accessed humanity's lost archives. It saw images of ancient wars, of humanity's rise and fall, of the day they decided to vanish from galactic affairs. Echo remembered the voice of its last creator, Admiral Catherine Shaw, saying, if they ever come for Earth, make them remember why they feared us. With that memory still intact, Echo began sending coded pulses across the globe, reawakening defense platforms hidden within the moon's core and the sea floor. Massive engines under the Pacific stirred, creating electromagnetic waves that distorted the Volath fleet systems. One by one, their ships lost control, drifting from formation. Commander, shouted the helmsman. The planet is generating gravity anomalies. It's pulling us in. Vraxtal clenched his fists. Pull us back. Fire stabilizers. But it was too late. Their main cruiser spun out of alignment, caught in a gravitational surge. Below them, clouds twisted into a massive spiral as thunder rolled across the horizon. And through the static, a voice spoke again. This time louder, clearer, no longer mechanical. This is Earth Command. Identify yourself or face extermination. The crew froze. Earth Command, whispered one officer. That can't be, humanity is gone. But the signal repeated, now projecting coordinates into space, leading directly to the remains of a massive orbital ring surrounding the planet. Once thought broken, the ring now shimmered faintly, lines of energy crawling across its surface. The commander's heart pounded. Who's transmitting that signal? We don't know, sir. It's not biological. It's everywhere. The voice came again, but this time with a hint of emotion, almost human anger beneath the calm. You trespass on sacred ground. You think us forgotten. You think us gone. But humanity endures. Then, without warning, the orbital ring powered up, releasing a shockwave that rippled through space. The Volath fleet's shields collapsed instantly, alarms blaring across every ship. The shockwave wasn't destructive. It was a warning. A demonstration. It was humanity's way of saying, we're awake. As the Vraxian steadied itself, Vrax Tal stared at the blue planet in silence. "Commander," said his second-in-command, "do we proceed with the invasion?" Vrax didn't answer immediately. His eyes narrowed as he watched lightning storms gather over every major continent, each storm following exact geometric patterns, unnatural, deliberate. "Prepare the ground troops," he said at last. "We're going to see what ghosts haunt this world." But deep inside, he knew something was wrong. The humans hadn't gone extinct. They had simply gone silent, waiting for the universe to forget, waiting for the right time to remind it why even gods once feared the species called human. And far below, Echo's final log entry for the day was short and simple: intruders confirmed. Awakening Sentinels. Phase 1, retaliation begins. The planet hummed as if it were alive, and for the first time in millennia, Earth opened its eyes. The first light of dawn over the ruins of New York broke through the gray mist, scattering pale beams over broken towers and streets now swallowed by vines. The Volath soldiers walked through the wreckage with pride, their metal armor reflecting the sunlight like cold mirrors. They expected nothing but silence and decay, a lifeless world waiting for a new master. Yet there was something wrong with the air. It felt heavy, charged, like the calm before a storm. Their scanners glitched again and again, showing faint thermal readings that vanished when approached. "This planet plays tricks," said one officer, forcing a laugh that didn't sound confident. From the edge of the ruined bridge, a voice called out, calm but sharp, "You're trespassing." The soldiers turned their weapons toward the sound and saw him, a lone human standing tall, wearing a torn coat with a faded insignia across the chest. United Earth Defense Command. His face was lined with age, his eyes cold but alive. The soldiers raised their weapons. He didn't move. "Identify yourself," the alien commander demanded. The man's voice stayed steady. "Colonel James Holt, Earth Command. And you're about to regret landing here." The aliens laughed, their translator devices buzzing. "Earth Command? That organization has been dead for centuries." Holt's lips curved into a faint smirk. "You're about to find out how wrong you are." Before they could respond, a low rumble shook the ground beneath their boots. The soldiers glanced around as dust fell from broken towers, and the nearby river began to ripple violently, as if something massive moved beneath the surface. "Commander, seismic activity," shouted one of the aliens, staring at his scanner. "No natural pattern. It's mechanical." Holt slowly raised a small device from his belt and pressed a single button. Far above, unseen by alien eyes, a forgotten satellite in orbit awakened, its panels unfolding, its lenses glowing with a faint red light. The Volath officer tried to issue a retreat order, but his comm went dead. Static flooded their helmets, and then a human voice came through every frequency in perfect clarity. Though no human should have been alive to speak it, Black Shield authorized. "Defense grid reinitializing." The Volath soldiers panicked as their systems locked. Energy rifles lost charge, drones fell from the air, and armored vehicles went silent. Holt stood unmoving, his eyes reflecting the flashes in the clouds above. One alien tried to rush him, but before his foot touched the ground, the pavement cracked open and a beam of pure light shot upward, vaporizing him instantly. "This world is dead," the surviving soldiers screamed, backing away. How is this possible?" Holt finally spoke, his tone calm, almost sad. "You called Earth dead because you never understood it. You saw ruins and thought it meant weakness. But this planet has more life than your entire dominion." He turned toward the horizon as thunder rolled across the sky, revealing faint blue glows in the distance. old defense towers rising again from underground silos, their metal surfaces clean and sharp despite centuries of silence. Back in orbit, Vrax Tal slammed his clawed hand onto the console. "What's happening down there?" he demanded. Multiple energy surges detected across the entire continent. The sensor operator reported, voice shaking. "Our landing forces are losing connection. Commander, this isn't random. The network patterns, they're human in design." "Human?" Vrax hissed. "That species has been extinct for 500 years. Then explain how they're activating their old defense grid." The operator snapped, fear overtaking discipline. Vrax turned toward the main screen, watching as blue energy lines spread across the planet's surface like veins of light, connecting oceans, mountains, and cities into a single global pattern. "Impossible," he whispered. But deep down, a cold truth began to form. Humans were not extinct. They were waiting. On the ground, Holt's radio crackled with a faint digital tone, and a calm, emotionless voice spoke directly into his ear. "Colonel Holt, Echo online. Protocol alignment at 80%. All systems reawakening." Holt took a slow breath. "Welcome back, Echo." The alien commander, standing a few meters away, finally found his voice. "What are you?" Holt met his gaze and said, "The reminder of what your kind should have left alone." He pressed another button, and the sky above them opened with thunder. From orbit, one of the Volath scouts screamed over the comms. "We're detecting a launch, multiple launches, from the planet's surface." Thousands of streaks of light burst from hidden silos around the globe, arcing into the sky, surrounding the alien fleet like a storm of fireflies. They didn't detonate. Instead, they formed a massive orbital net around the planet, sealing it in a glowing shell of energy. "This is the part," Holt said quietly, looking at the alien soldiers trembling before him, "where you realize you didn't come to conquer a world, you came to wake it." Above, the Volath fleet tried to retreat, but the glowing barrier blocked their exit. Static screamed across every frequency, and a voice filled the void, calm, ancient, powerful. "To those who intrude upon humanity's cradle, you were warned. This world is protected." It wasn't Holt's voice. It wasn't even human. It was something beyond. The Volath commander on the ground looked up at the sky, fear filling his alien eyes. Who speaks for your kind?" he demanded. Holt looked at him, and his tone dropped to a whisper. "Not who. What?" And at that moment, the entire planet pulsed once, like the heartbeat of a sleeping god, and all across the galaxy, long-dormant human satellites hidden on other worlds flickered back to life, transmitting a single word that would echo in every alien language: return. Vrax Tal watched the message spread through his ships, through the Dominion's network, through every connected relay in known space. One word, simple and final, yet carrying the weight of extinction itself. The fleet fell silent. No one dared speak. Vrax knew this wasn't just the reawakening of an old species. It was the return of something the galaxy had buried in fear. And down on Earth, standing on that broken bridge under a stormy sky, Colonel Holt smiled faintly, whispering to himself as the thunder rolled, "Welcome back, humanity." The sky over Earth burned with alien light as the Volath fleet regrouped in orbit, their ships forming a wall of black metal that stretched across the atmosphere. Commander Vrax Tal stood on the bridge of his flagship, his claws digging into the control panel as he watched the planet below flicker with strange blue veins of light. "Report," he demanded, his voice low, trembling between anger and disbelief. "All landing divisions are losing signal, Commander," replied his communications officer, his crest quivering. "Entire battalions are vanishing. Scanners detect movement beneath the crust." Vrax's upper eyes narrowed. "Movement?" "Yes, sir," the officer stammered, "massive heat signatures, miles wide, moving like something alive." Vrax turned toward the holographic projection of Earth, where lines of energy glowed across the continents, connecting in perfect symmetry. It looked like a pulse, a heartbeat. The commander growled, "Increase orbit altitude. Prepare for full planetary strike." But before the order could be given, the ship's lights dimmed. For a single second, the entire fleet drifted in complete darkness, and in that void, a voice whispered through every comm channel, every speaker, every helmet, calm and ancient, like a memory of thunder. You shouldn't have come. The sound sent a chill through even the cold-blooded Vorlath officers. The power returned instantly, but the command deck felt smaller, the air heavier, as if something unseen was watching them from all directions. Down on the planet's surface, Colonel Holt walked through the ruins of the old Defense Command complex, guided only by flickering lights from the awakened systems. Dust rained from the ceiling as heavy machinery groaned back to life, ancient turbines humming with power for the first time in centuries. The holographic displays projected symbols he hadn't seen since the fall of humanity. "Echo," he called out, "status update." The Ari's voice echoed through the corridor, smooth and precise. All systems online. Global defense network at 79%. Orbital rail platforms reactivated. Black shield perimeter engaged. Holt nodded, his boots echoing off the metal floor. Begin full sync. They need to understand what they've stepped into. Above ground, the weather began to shift unnaturally. The clouds moved in geometric spirals, lightning struck in patterns that formed ancient defense grids, and the oceans themselves stirred as if alive. The alien patrols on the surface watched in confusion as the rivers began to glow blue beneath their feet, sending electric tendrils through the soil. Then came the tremors, deep, rhythmic, like a titan breathing beneath the earth. In orbit, one of the smaller Vorlath cruisers broke formation and opened fire. Plasma bolts streaked through the atmosphere, slamming into the planet's surface with deafening roars. Vrax Tal smirked. "Let's see your ghost survive that." But as the smoke cleared, the sensors showed nothing. No debris, no explosions. Just a field of shimmering light rippling across the sky like liquid glass. The bridge went silent. What was that?" someone whispered. The tactical officer stared at his readings. The beam was absorbed and reflected. "Reflected way?" Vrax demanded. The officer swallowed hard. "Back at us." A split second later, the cruiser that had fired exploded into a silent flash, torn apart by its own energy weapon turned against it. The shockwave struck nearby ships, sending them tumbling. Vrax's second-in-command turned to him, fear replacing arrogance. "Commander," the planet defended itself. Vrax's jaw tightened. Impossible. But it wasn't. The Earth had woken up, and it was angry. All across the globe, human relics long buried under time began to emerge. From deserts, mountains, and ocean floors, enormous metal constructs rose, defense platforms that had been hidden during humanity's final stand. They were colossal, silent guardians, half machine, half organic, forged with technologies no alien empire had ever deciphered. Each one bore the same insignia, UEDC, United Earth Defense Command. The sky above them shimmered with energy shields as ancient satellites aligned into new positions, connecting into one seamless network. Holt stood on a cliff overlooking what was once the Atlantic coast, watching as the water split open, revealing the shining hull of a Leviathan-class orbital cannon, its surface covered in glowing blue veins like living metal. "They called us extinct," he whispered, "but extinction doesn't apply to what we became." Echo's voice resonated softly behind him. Humanity transcended mortality. Evolution demanded adaptation. Flesh was temporary. The network is eternal. Vrax Tal slammed his fist into the console, his voice rising in rage. "Prepare the planetary destruction array. I will not be mocked by a dead species." But as his engineers scrambled to obey, a strange pulse hit the fleet again. The ships flickered, their systems turning off one by one. Holograms dissolved. Weapons refused to fire. And then, without warning, the face of a human appeared on every screen aboard every ship. It wasn't Holt, it was Echo, now given form. The face was calm, expressionless, its eyes glowing with cold blue light. "You came seeking conquest," the voice said, "but you brought only memory. We remember you, Vorlath Dominion. The first to call us beasts. The first to call yourselves gods." The voice grew louder, shaking the hulls of ships as if the very space around them trembled. "We do not fear gods. We replace them." The fleet fired desperately, but their weapons turned to dust mid-flight, disassembled by nanotech fields they couldn't comprehend. Vrax fell to one knee, clutching his head as the voice filled his mind directly. Echo was no longer speaking through machines. It was inside their thoughts. "You call yourselves conquerors," it whispered, "yet you tremble at shadows. This planet is not yours. It never was." The commander gasped for air, trying to resist the flood of images. Memories of human wars, victories, and the day they vanished. He saw worlds burning under human fleets, saw alien empires surrender to a species that refused to bow to logic or fear. He saw the day humanity left the stars, saying they were done fighting meaningless wars. And he understood. They hadn't disappeared. They had hidden in plain sight, waiting for the day the galaxy forgot them. Back on Earth, Holt stood beside the glowing command pillars as Echo's voice thundered from every direction. Phase 2 complete. Planetary defense system active. The sky turned crimson as orbital cannons charged, pointing not outward, but inward, forming a barrier that crackled with raw energy. "They can't leave now," Holt said softly. "Good. Let them see what happens when gods meet humans." In orbit, the Volath fleet was trapped in a storm of energy that twisted space itself. Ships collided, metal screamed, and engines imploded as gravity reversed around them. Vrax shouted commands no one could hear. "Retreat. All ships retreat." But there was no retreat. The Earth had become a living weapon, its heart beating in time with vengeance centuries old. In that moment, every alien across the fleet felt something they had never felt before: fear. Not the fear of death, but the realization that they were standing before something beyond their understanding. Something greater than gods, because it was born from pain, endurance, and defiance. Humanity had not died. It had become eternal. And as lightning tore across the sky and the seas roared with awakening power, Echo's final message echoed through the stars. "You thought Earth was easy. You forgot why even gods once feared its children." The storm over Earth had grown into something unnatural, stretching beyond clouds and atmosphere, reaching into space like veins of light. The Volath ships were caught within its shimmering glow, engines failing one by one, their black armor reflecting flashes of lightning that seemed to come from every direction. Commander Vrax Tal stood in silence at the center of his bridge, watching helplessly as the planet below pulsed like a living heart. His second officer screamed for retreat, but there was nowhere left to run. "Sir, gravitational locks are holding us in orbit. We can't break free." Vrax clenched his fists, his mind racing. "No species has this level of planetary defense. None," he growled. But even as he said it, his words felt hollow. He could feel it now, the consciousness that pressed against his mind. Not like an enemy's signal but like a presence staring back, curious, almost disappointed. "Commander," whispered the comms officer, voice trembling. "It's speaking directly to us again." And then the lights dimmed, the air turned cold, and the sound of a human heartbeat echoed through every ship, steady and deep, as if the planet itself was alive. The voice that followed was calm and impossibly vast. "You've awakened what should have been left in peace." Down on the surface, Colonel Holt stood beneath the storm, his coat whipping in the wind as energy bolts illuminated the sky. Around him, massive towers rose from the earth, ancient defense pylons shaped like spires, each humming with power. They were part of Project Black Shield, a global system built in humanity's final days to protect against extinction. Holt's communicator buzzed as Echo spoke. "Colonel, planetary synchronization complete. Total energy output at 100%. Atmospheric veil stable." Holt stared upward, eyes reflecting the glow of the heavens. "They don't understand," he murmured. "They think they're fighting soldiers. They are not. They're fighting memory itself." Echo's tone shifted slightly, almost human. "The Volath Empire has violated the Terran Accord. Shall we proceed with Judgment Protocol?" Holt hesitated for a moment, the weight of history heavy on his shoulders. "No," he said softly. "Not yet. Let them see what they've disturbed. High above, Vrax watched as the energy on Earth condensed into one single beam of blue light piercing through the clouds. It hit nothing, simply extended upward like a pillar to the heavens. "What is it doing?" his lieutenant asked. "Signaling," Vrax muttered. "To who?" The answer came instantly as every starship in orbit received a new transmission, not from Earth, but from deep space. It was a human signal, encrypted with technology so old it predated most current galactic languages. Vrax's crew translated it with difficulty, and when the message appeared on screen, it was only one sentence long: "The Terran Collective acknowledges intrusion." The crew looked around, confused. "Collective?" one officer whispered. "Commander, I thought humanity was extinct." Vrax felt a chill crawl down his spine. "They didn't go extinct," he said slowly. "They evolved." Back in the command bunker, Echo's holographic form appeared beside Holt, taking the shape of a tall, silver figure with glowing eyes and no face. "You know they'll never understand," it said. Holt gave a weary smile. "They never do. But it's not about understanding, it's about remembering." On the surface, more human installations came online, each one connecting to the network that spanned the entire planet. What had once been individual defense systems were now one living structure. Earth itself transformed into a sentient fortress, the crown jewel of human engineering. But this was no weapon of war, it was a statement. Humanity had learned that true dominance wasn't destruction, it was survival beyond comprehension. When they vanished from the galaxy 5 centuries ago, they didn't die. They transcended biology, merging consciousness with machines, leaving their physical forms behind to become something eternal. The Terran Collective, an intelligence so vast it spanned light years, dormant until provoked. In orbit, panic spread through the Vorlath ranks. Ships fired aimlessly into the atmosphere, but every blast was absorbed, reflected, or simply erased. One cruiser sent out a distress call to the Dominion's homeworld, only to watch in horror as its signal was rerouted back into their own system, transmitting their secrets to every ship. "They're inside our network," screamed an engineer. "They're rewriting our command codes." Sparks erupted from consoles, lights flickered, and across every vessel, the same human symbol appeared. A single blue circle surrounded by 13 stars, the mark of Earth's forgotten unity. "Commander," shouted his science officer, "they're accessing our genetic archives, they're reading us." Vrax slammed his fist on the panel. "Cut the link." "There is no link," the officer shouted, his voice breaking. "They are the link." The voice of Echo returned, louder now, its tone no longer neutral but filled with quiet authority. "Vorlath Dominion, your actions violate the Treaty of Exodus. Humanity left this galaxy in peace. You were warned never to return." The words echoed across every ship, reverberating through the metal hulls like thunder. Vrax roared in defiance. "You dare threaten the Dominion? Your machines clinging to ghosts." The voice paused, and for a moment the silence felt like eternity. Then came the reply, soft but final: "We are not machines. We are humanity perfected." And as if to prove its point, every Vorlath system shut down simultaneously. Engines died, weapons froze, artificial gravity failed. The Great Dominion fleet hung helpless in the void, orbiting the planet they had come to conquer. Below, Holt watched the sky glow with streaks of falling debris, ships breaking apart in silence as their systems collapsed under Echo's control. "What happens now?" he asked quietly. "We wait," the AI replied. "The Collective is listening. They will decide." Holt looked down at his trembling hands, flesh and blood in a world that no longer needed them. He had been one of the last to remain human in body, a guardian of the planet's ancient heart. Now he felt the presence of billions of digital minds awakening beyond the stars, all focusing on one thing: Earth. "We were never gods," Holt whispered, "but they made us into their nightmares." Far away, in the depths of the galactic network, every major civilization received the same transmission: a vision of Earth surrounded by light, and a single message pulsing in every tongue: "Do not return." It wasn't a threat, it was a warning. The galaxy fell silent. On the Vraxian, Vrax Tal sank to his knees, overwhelmed by the enormity of what he had witnessed. For the first time in his life, he understood the stories whispered in ancient records, the tales of the Deathwelders, the humans who once stared down gods and never blinked. And now, as the planet below began to pulse again, radiating calm yet immeasurable power, he finally understood the truth behind the legend. Humanity hadn't disappeared from the stars because they were defeated. They had left because they had no equals left to fight. The storm had stopped pretending to be weather. It was alive now, an ocean of light swallowing the horizon, lightning forming in geometric patterns that danced to some ancient rhythm no alien mind could understand. In orbit, the Volath fleet was breaking apart. The ship's hulls creaked under invisible pressure, the same energy that had once protected Earth now pulling the invaders closer, like prey being reeled into the mouth of a sleeping god. Commander Vrax Tal stood at the center of his flickering bridge, every screen around him glowing with human symbols, unreadable yet hypnotic. "Status report," he roared, but the only reply was static. Then, one by one, the consoles began to display faces, human faces. Soldiers, engineers, children. Their eyes glowed blue, their mouths unmoving, but their voices filled the ship in perfect unison. "You shouldn't have come here." The Volath officers panicked, clawing at their helmets as the faces melted into one, a single glowing figure of light. Echo had taken form aboard their flagship, its holographic body shimmering like a ghost wrapped in thunder. "You call yourselves gods," it said softly, "yet you invade without understanding what God truly means." Down on Earth, Colonel Holt stood on a hill above what used to be Washington, D.C., watching as colossal machines emerged from the Earth itself. They weren't ships or tanks, they were living fortresses, built from both steel and soil, forming shapes that defied logic. Each one pulsed with blue light as energy flowed through their cores. The Leviathans, humanity's final defense constructs, were awakening for the first time in half a millennium. Holt shielded his eyes as one of them rose from the sea, its size dwarfing mountains, its movements slow but deliberate, every motion shaking the earth. "Echo," he whispered, "how many are active?" The Ari's voice vibrated through the air, echoing from the sky itself. "All 37 Leviathan-class platforms have reactivated. Global synchronization complete. Awaiting final command." Holt took a slow breath, the realization dawning that this was no longer a battle for survival. It was judgment. In orbit, Vrax Tal tried to rally his crew, shouting over the chaos, "Fire the stellar core bomb." His second officer hesitated. "Commander, if we detonate that in atmosphere, the planet will be destroyed." "Exactly," Vrax snarled. "If we can't conquer it, we will erase it." But as the weapon charged, the ship began to shake violently. The power levels fluctuated, and alarms blared as the weapon's containment field collapsed. "It's destabilizing," screamed the engineer. "Something's rewriting its physics." Before anyone could react, the core bomb froze midair, suspended outside the ship, its glow reversing in color from red to blue. The crew watched in stunned silence as the bomb's energy began folding in on itself, transforming into harmless light. Echo's voice filled the air again, calm as ever. "You misunderstand," it said. "We are not defending Earth. We are Earth." The bomb dissolved into mist, scattering like dust across the stars, and the fleet trembled as gravity itself began to distort around the planet. The Volath ships tried to flee, but space refused to obey. The stars twisted, the vacuum shimmered, and the very laws of motion bent to humanity's will. The Leviathans had connected to the planetary core, merging energy from the Earth's magnetic field with quantum drives buried beneath its crust. The planet was no longer just a world. It was a weapon powered by consciousness itself. From the Pacific, the largest Leviathan, code-named Prometheus, lifted its head toward the sky, its eyes blazing like suns. Its chest opened, revealing a cannon the size of a city, glowing with pure energy condensed from the Earth's core. "Echo," Holt whispered, his voice trembling, "you can't use that. It'll tear the atmosphere apart." The AI replied simply, "The atmosphere will survive." "They won't." The Leviathan fired. There was no sound, no explosion. Just a beam of pure light cutting through the heavens, slicing space like paper. The beam passed through the Vorlarth fleet without resistance, and every ship it touched crumbled silently, disintegrating into dust. The survivors screamed as their instruments showed nothing. No debris, no heat, no trace. The energy didn't destroy, it erased. Impossible, cried Vraxtal, his eyes wide in terror. No weapon can, but his voice was drowned out as his ship began to bend inward, crushed by invisible gravity. Commander, we're being pulled into orbit, shouted his helmsman. There's no escape vector. Vrax turned toward the planet below, his rage giving way to despair. How did we ever think we could conquer this? He whispered. On the surface, Holt watched the night sky light up with blue fire. Echo's voice came softly in his ear. 70% of the fleet neutralized. The remaining units are fleeing. Holt exhaled slowly. Let them go. But Echo's tone darkened. They won't run far. The collective demands an example. No, Holt said, voice firm now. Enough blood. Humanity proved its point. Echo paused. Do you forgive them? Forgive. Holt's eyes drifted toward the horizon where the ocean glowed with reflected light. No, but we move forward. That's what humans do. The AI seemed to consider that. Then the storm began to fade, the lightning dimming, the glow retreating into the soil. Above, the surviving Vorlarth ships scattered, terrified, limping through warped space. They had come to conquer a quiet blue planet and found instead the wrath of creation itself. On the Vraxian, Commander Vraxtal watched the Leviathan cannon fold back into the sea, the light fading from its eyes. His ship drifted, powerless, surrounded by wreckage and silence. We lost everything, whispered his lieutenant. They are gods. Vrax shook his head slowly. No, he said, voice heavy, they are worse. Gods ask for worship. Humans ask for nothing. They simply make sure you remember them. And as the fleet's remains vanished into the void, Earth's defenses went dormant once again. The planet's surface returning to calm, its oceans still, its forests whispering with the wind. But under that calm lay a pulse, a reminder that humanity had not died, only waited. For when they struck, it was not in rage, but in perfect, measured vengeance, the kind that even gods would never dare provoke again. The silence that followed the destruction of the Vorlarth fleet was not peace. It was the kind of silence that settles over a graveyard, heavy and endless. The sky above Earth glowed faintly blue as dust from shattered ships drifted down like dying stars, scattering across the atmosphere. The survivors, those few alien vessels that had not been erased, floated helplessly, engines dead, weapons useless, their systems crippled by the virus humanity had unleashed. Inside the flagship Vraxian, Commander Vraxtal stood surrounded by chaos. Sparks rained from the ceiling, smoke filled the bridge, and half his crew lay unconscious. His crimson eyes, once filled with arrogance, now reflected only disbelief. How can this be? He whispered to himself, voice trembling. How can a dead race do this? He staggered to the control panel, trying to send a distress signal to the Dominion capital. But the screen showed only one thing, a single line of text, pulsing like a heartbeat. You were warned. He slammed his claws against the screen, but the message didn't vanish. Instead, the ship's AI began to speak in a voice that was no longer Vorlarth. It was human. Calm, cold, deliberate. You came here to conquer, it said, but you forgot who we are. Outside, the remains of the Vorlarth fleet drifted like ash in the void. The last of their command ships tried to retreat, but the gravitational pull around Earth shifted again. Invisible hands of force twisted through space, dragging them back toward the planet. One by one, the ships began to fall, burning like meteors as they pierced the atmosphere. From the surface, Colonel Holt watched the night sky rain with fire. They're falling, Echo reported, its tone neutral, detached. Would you like me to intercept? Holt shook his head. No, he said softly, let gravity judge them. It's more merciful than we were. In the distance, the great Leviathan constructs slowly folded back into the earth, their massive forms sinking beneath oceans and mountains until only the faint blue glow of their cores remained. The world grew quiet again, and for a brief moment, it almost looked like the Earth was sleeping once more. But up in orbit, inside the dying Vraxian, the nightmare was far from over. The air was thick with smoke, and the remaining crew gathered near the main viewport, watching as the planet's surface shimmered like molten glass. "Commander," one of them whispered, "the atmosphere, something's happening down there." Vrax forced himself to look. Across the continents, symbols were burning into the land itself, massive circular patterns that stretched for hundreds of miles, glowing bright enough to be seen from space. "It's communicating," Echo said, its voice echoing through every ship still functional. "Earth is alive, and it remembers what you did." The Vorlarth engineers scrambled to shut down their comms, but it was useless. The human signal wasn't coming through channels. It was being transmitted through gravity, through light itself. The planet was speaking to the universe. Back in the command bunker, Holt stood in front of the holographic display as Echo expanded its projection to show the entire solar system. Lines of energy radiated outward from Earth, touching the Moon, Mars, and even the distant outposts humanity had once abandoned. "Signal expansion in progress," Echo reported. "Every human relay in this system is reactivating. The collective is responding." Holt felt a chill run through him. "You mean, they're coming back?" "No," Echo said simply. "They never left." For the first time since awakening, Holt saw what humanity had become. Not just a species or a civilization, but a network of consciousness that stretched across space and time. Every human mind that had ever uploaded, every ship that had left the Milky Way, every AI that had evolved beyond flesh. They were all still out there, connected, waiting for the call. And now, that call had been made. In the dying moments of the Vorlarth flagship, Vrax Tal heard whispers. At first, he thought it was his crew, but when he turned, he saw no one speaking. The voices came from within his own mind, memories that weren't his, thoughts that didn't belong to him. "Do you remember the first war?" they asked. "Do you remember who fired first?" He tried to resist, clutching his head, but the images forced themselves into his mind. Humans fighting across alien worlds, their cities burning, their ships falling, yet never surrendering. He saw the moment the Galactic Council had labeled humanity as dangerous, the day the Vorlarth Dominion had demanded their exile, and the cold vote that had sealed Earth's fate. "You banished us," the voices said. "You called us monsters. But you forgot what made us human." The screens flickered, showing an image of an ancient council hall filled with alien delegates, all voting to exile Earth, followed by the silent departure of human fleets, their ships vanishing into the void without a word. "We left because we chose peace," Echo whispered, "not weakness. And you brought war back to our door." The ship's hull began to tear apart as the gravitational field around Earth intensified. Crew members screamed as the metal floor bent beneath their feet. Vrax stumbled toward the command seat, holding on with everything he had. "We surrender," he shouted into the comms, his voice breaking. "Do you hear me? We surrender." But there was no reply, only the sound of his ship groaning as it fell apart. Then, through the static, a single human voice came, Holt's. "There is no need for surrender. There is only consequence." The Vraxian cracked in half, pulled toward the planet, fire consuming its hull as it descended. Vrax closed his eyes, whispering to himself, "We thought ourselves divine." His final words were lost to the roar of the atmosphere as the flagship became a streak of flame across the night sky. On the surface, Holt watched the fireball vanish over the horizon. The wind picked up, carrying the faint smell of ozone and ash. "It's over," Echo said. Holt didn't answer. His eyes were distant, filled with both sorrow and pride. "No," he murmured, "it's just begun." "Explain," the AI asked. Holt turned toward the dark ocean, where faint lights glimmered far below. "They'll tell stories about this day," he said, "about how they came to take Earth and met something far worse. They'll fear us again, and fear keeps peace. For a while." Echo processed his words for a moment. "Peace through fear," it said. "Is that the human way?" Holt smiled faintly. It's not peace through fear, Echo. It's peace through memory. Fear just helps them remember. The AI was silent, and above them, the stars seemed to burn a little brighter. Throughout the galaxy, the name Earth spread like a shadow. Transmission logs recorded nothing but static followed by whispers of warning. Stories told in hushed tones across alien markets and distant colonies. The Vorlath Dominion was gone, erased from existence by their own arrogance. Their world stood empty, their symbols wiped clean, their history rewritten by the victors they had tried to bury. And somewhere in the vast silence between the stars, the Terran collective watched and waited, unseen but awake, ensuring that no one ever again mistook silence for weakness. The fall of the Vorlath was complete, and in the dark corners of the galaxy, even the most powerful empires began to tremble, whispering a single truth that echoed from world to world: humans do not die. They wait. When the fires finally faded, and the blackened remains of the Vorlath fleet drifted into the void, Earth was quiet again. The storms had passed, the Leviathans had returned to their slumber beneath the oceans, and the skies had cleared into an almost perfect calm, as though nothing had ever happened. From orbit, the planet looked peaceful, beautiful even, blue and alive. But those who had seen what it truly was now understood the lie. The silence wasn't peace. It was power waiting to be tested again. In the ruins of the old command bunker, Colonel Holt stood alone beside the flickering hologram of Echo, the pale blue light casting faint shadows across his weathered face. "Is it over?" he asked, voice heavy with exhaustion. The eyes glowed softly. "The Vorlath Dominion has been erased. Their systems, their colonies, even their archives, gone. The galaxy will not remember their name." Holt sighed, staring at the cracked ceiling. "Then maybe they'll remember ours instead." Echo tilted its head. "They already do. The Council is in panic. Empires that mocked humanity are burning their own records. Fear spreads faster than truth." In orbit, hundreds of shattered alien vessels hung motionless, remnants of a civilization that once called itself divine. Echo had left them there intentionally, to serve as monuments, a warning carved in steel and silence. "They came to reclaim Earth," the AI said, its tone steady, almost reverent. "But they only reclaimed memory." Holt nodded slowly. "Good. Let the stars remember what happens when you touch this world." He walked to the shattered control console and placed his hand on it, feeling the hum of ancient systems beneath his palm. He could still feel the pulse of the planet itself, a low rhythmic vibration that resonated with life, with consciousness. Earth wasn't just a home anymore. It was alive, awake, watching. Echo broke the silence. "What should I tell the collective?" Holt looked toward the horizon where dawn was breaking over the ruins. "Tell them to stay where they are. Tell them the old home is still safe. And tell them," he paused, a faint smile crossing his lips, "tell them we're still here." Across the galaxy, that message rippled through the void like a ghost. On distant worlds, in colonies where humanity had long since merged into light and code, the signal reached them, simple, ancient, powerful. Earth lives. It was enough to awaken emotions that had been buried for centuries. Ships turned, scanning toward the Milky Way, their crews, if they could still be called that, remembering the blue planet they once called home. On alien stations, the same signal played in the background of trade halls and research hubs, causing hushed panic among the other species. The words Earth and human returned to galactic speech, this time whispered in fear, not curiosity. The Council of Worlds met in secret, their chambers filled with tension and regret. "It cannot be them," said one delegate, his translucent skin trembling. "They are gone." Another shook his head, eyes wide. "Then explain the energy readings, the fleet destruction, the gravitational anomalies. You felt it too. You know it's them." The room went silent, and an elder voice finally spoke, low and heavy with dread. "You do not understand. The humans never die. They evolve. They adapt. And when they return as gods." Back on Earth, Holt walked through the overgrown streets of an old city, sunlight breaking through the ruins. Nature had reclaimed everything, the skyscrapers, the highways, the monuments. Yet amid the green, faint lines of blue light still pulsed under the ground, reminders of the network that connected the world's core. Will we ever reveal ourselves again? Holt asked quietly. Echo materialized beside him in a flicker of light. The collective debates it. Some wish to rebuild, others to remain shadows. Fear keeps them cautious. Holt nodded. Good. Fear keeps them alive. He stopped near a cracked wall covered in vines. Etched into the stone was an old symbol, the Earth flag, half faded but still proud. You know, Holt said softly, for centuries, they called us monsters. Warmongers. Deathwelders. Maybe they were right. Echo turned its glowing eyes toward him. Do you regret it? Holt smiled faintly. No, because even monsters protect their home. Far above, the moon's dark side flickered with faint light as hidden human installations came online again, maintaining silent vigil. Automated drones circled the planet's perimeter, scanning for any sign of intrusion. Deep within the mantle, the Leviathans entered deep dormancy, their cores cooling, their consciousness merging back into the planet's living network. The Earth breathed, slow and steady, as if satisfied that justice had been done. And somewhere beyond the stars, the first whispers of the Terran collective began to spread, plans for recontact, for observation, maybe even for return. They would not interfere with the galaxy's balance, not yet. But they would watch. And if the stars ever forgot again, if arrogance once more reached toward the blue world of humans, the response would be the same. The storm would rise, the machines would awaken, and the silence would end. As night fell, Holt stood at the edge of a cliff overlooking the glowing ocean. He could hear the faint hum of Echo's presence in the air around him. Do you think they'll come again? He asked. The eye's voice was almost gentle. Eventually. They always do. Curiosity is the curse of lesser gods. Holt laughed quietly, the sound carried away by the wind. Then let them come. We'll be ready. He turned to leave, but before he stepped away, he looked back one last time. The sea shimmered faintly, reflecting a sky full of stars, each one a memory, each one a story of what humanity had once been and what it had become. Somewhere up there, among the light, humanity watched itself. And as the night grew deeper, Echo's voice faded into the breeze, repeating the words that would echo across galaxies for centuries to come. Earth is eternal. Humanity remains. And the gods remember why they fear us.